الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ربنا بما علمتنا وزدنا من كرمك علما يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم طهر قلوبنا وأزل عيوبنا وتولنا بالحسنى وزينا بالتقوى واجمع لنا خيري الآخرة والأولى وارزقنا طاعتك ما أبقيتنا يا رحمن يا رحيم. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وعلمنا بالحلم وزينا بالعلم واجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين ووفقنا توفيق الصالحين واجعلنا من المتقربين إليك على علم وهدى وبصيرة يا فتاح يا عليم. وصل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين. Alhamdulillah, by the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is come and His fadl upon us. Will continue with the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa nafa'ana bih. In the previous lesson we started the 35th hadith on the brotherhood of Islam. Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala narrated through an unbroken chain of narration to Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تحاسدوا ولا تناجشوا ولا تباغضوا ولا تدابروا ولا بيع بعضكم على بعض ولا يبع بعضكم على بيع بعض وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. We started with the first amr, the first command in the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَا تَحَاسَدُوا, do not envy each other. And we mentioned that envy, to hasad, according to Sharia, is to desire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes a favor from someone. Whether or not we want it to come to us or to another person, hasad, according to Sharia, is desiring that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes a favor from someone. And we mentioned that it is the first sin that occurred among human beings. The first sin among man and the earth is hasad, between the two sons of Adam, alayhi salatu wassalam. And it is the first sin in the heavens. This is the first sin that occurred fi as-sama' and in the heavens by Iblis. And we mentioned that in the Sunnah, the word hasad is used in two ways. The haqiqa shar'iyya in its original intended shar'i meaning, which is the one that we just mentioned. And sometimes it is used in its majazi, its figurative shar'i meaning. So it's not hasad shar'i that is haram, but sometimes the word hasad is used to mean ghibta. Ghibta is to want what others have without what they have being removed from them. Somebody has money, for example, we want to have like what they have without what they have being removed from them. This is called ghibta. And ghibta, when it comes to matters of the dunya, is mubah, according to Sharia. To have ghibta for the dunya of others. To want money like others have. To want the houses and the cars like what other people have. To want children like other people. This desire is mubah, according to Sharia, or makruh. And for ukhrawi things, for things that relate to the akhirah, ghibta is mustahab. when it comes to things of the akhirah, to want to have knowledge like another person of the religion so that we can act on it and teach it is mustahab. To want to have money so that we can be able to give charity like others do is mustahab. And other things. And to want matters of religion so that we can come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that form of ghibta is mustahab. It is recommended by Sharia. It's not haram or makruh. That's where we start. And we also mentioned that to feel envy in the heart and to act on it is haram by ijma'. It is haram by the agreement of the ulama. To feel it, not fight it, but not act on it is also haram according to majority of the ulama. So you feel envy in your heart, you don't act on it, but at the same time you're not trying to repel it. This is also haram according to majority of the ulama, and according to Imam al-Hasan al-Basri, this is not haram, because we're not acting upon it. And to feel it in the heart, and to repel it, and try our best to get rid of it, and not like that it's there, is not haram according to the agreement of the ulama. Because at that point, we're not responsible for it. It's there and we don't want it to be there, and we're trying to get rid of it. So that is not haram. We said that Al-Hasan eats away good deeds based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Hasad, to be jealous of people, eats away our good deeds the way fire burns wood. And it damages our iman the way sabr spoils milk. Sabr is a type of rock that exists in, they call it in the Arab world, Sabr Yemeni. It's mostly found in Yemen. It's, according to the Arabs, it's the most bitter thing on the planet. It sells in the streets if you go to, like, for example, when you make Hajj and Umrah, it's something that sells on the streets. People use it to treat diabetes. It's a black rock. If you take a little grain of it, small, like what is equivalent to like a fat grain of sugar, if you take that much of it, you put it in milk, the entire milk becomes extremely bitter. It's a very bitter thing. So the Prophet ﷺ in one hadith, he said that hasad, jealousy, bitters your iman. It spoils your iman the way that rock makes milk bitter. In other words, iman is pure, like the way milk is pure. But it can be corrupt with something like hasad, even a small amount. The way a small amount of sabr can spoil an entire pot of milk. And then the hadith continues. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا, and do not deceive each other. Najash, according to Sharia, najash is to increase, to drive up the price of an item when you have no interest in it. It is called deceitful bargaining. According to the Shafi'i method, it doesn't matter if you're in agreement with the seller or not. And it doesn't matter if your intention was to get another buyer to buy the item at a higher price or not. It doesn't matter. According to the Shafi'i method, najash is simply bargaining on an item to drive the price up for others who you have no interest in. In modern sales, this might be hard to imagine in most parts of the world, but it still happens in the many parts of the Muslim world where items are not set, the prices are not set. Anything you want to buy is up for bargaining. Anyway, you go to the market, it's not like there's a price in the items. You want to buy something, you go, you offer a price, and there's always a negotiation between you and the seller. Even taxis and stuff is how it works, and even until now in many parts of the Arab world. So you go to the marketplace, there's an item there. You see some people around. Most of the time it's with agreement with the seller. You're in cahoots with the seller. So you come and for example, you see this item and you see somebody looking at it. So you go to the buyer and say, I'll give you 100 for it. So now that person in his mind, oh, Like this seller can get 100 already. You're already probably thinking, I'll buy it for 50. So then you say, I'll give you 100. So that other person now feels that if you're not going to buy it, he needs to offer more. Because the seller has already offered 100. So now he'll offer more to buy it for a higher price. This is what is called najash. It's called bay'un najash. So this is haram if you don't have any interest in the item. If you have an interest in the item, it's not najash, you're just bargaining. But if you have no interest in the item, you're just there to drive the price up for other people, this is haram, it's called najash. So the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا. Do not do this, this is haram. However, it is still valid according to the Shafi'i madhab. The sale is valid, but the act of tanajush is haram. The act of being haram does not cause the sales to be invalid. It's a general principle in the Shafi'i madhab. According to the Shafi'i school, usul al-fiqh, according to the Shafi'i madhab, if there's a prohibition, and that prohibition is not directly related to a thing itself, or to an inseparable quality of a thing, then the prohibition does not necessitate invalidity. I'll go that again. In the Shafi'i madhab, if there's a prohibition, and that prohibition is not related to a thing itself, or an inseparable quality of a thing, then the prohibition does not necessitate invalidity. We treat the prohibition as separate from the thing itself. This example would be a sale. A sale is simply the exchange between two people of two items upon which they've agreed. This is a sale. I agree to sell you this item for an exchange, a specific thing that you are going to give me, and we agree on the two items. This is a sales. The tahrim, the prohibition of najash, has nothing to do with that exchange. Therefore, it would not make the thing invalid. This is according to the Shafi'i method. According to the Hanbali method and others, the prohibition necessitates invalidity. So for other than that, let's give another example. In the Shafi'i method, you have to cover your elbow to pray salah. It is haram to steal clothing. If somebody steals clothing, cover his elbow. And let's say he steals a prayer mat and prays on it. Stealing the prayer mat, the place upon which you've prayed, the clothing in which you prayed, and a condition for the validity of the prayer is covering the awrah. The fact that you stole that thing that covered your awrah doesn't make the covering itself invalid. It doesn't make the prayer invalid. The prayer is valid. Why? Because the arkan of the salah has nothing to do with whether you stole the clothes or not. The condition of fulfilling the condition of covering the awrah has nothing to do with whether the thing with which you cover the awrah is stolen or not stolen. It's halal or haram. What matters is the awrah is covered. So the stealing will not affect the prayer, because it does not affect the prayer itself or any inseparable quality of the prayer. The arkan and the shurut are fulfilled. So the prayer is valid. The act of stealing something to cover your awrah to fulfill the condition for the salah is haram. These are two separate things. Whereas, for example, if I stole money to give charity, the charity itself is what? Me giving an item to somebody. That's what charity is. So if I stole the item, the stealing relates directly to the charity itself. According to the Shafi'i madhab, here is where the prohibition makes the act invalid. Because the prohibition is now related to the thing itself. Is that clear? There are many examples in fiqh for this. So for us to say, bay'un najash is haram, but it is valid if done. So if done, the sale is valid. You don't have to return the item. If the sale is invalid, you have to return the item to the seller. The seller needs to give you whatever you paid for it because the sale is invalid. The ownership is invalid. You have not owned that thing. If you buy it and you die, then your inheritors cannot inherit it. This would mean the sale is invalid. But according to the Shafi'i method, we say the sale is valid, meaning you actually own that item. If you die, people can inherit it from you. You don't have to return the item to the seller. It's a valid contract. But the act of driving up the price is haram. So, وَلَا تَنَاجَشُوا. Do not deceive each other in business transaction. In that specific form. This is called bay' najash. According to some of the ulama, the word لَا تَنَاجَشُوا in the hadith could also mean general, not that specific thing, but generally do not deceive each other in a way that you profit from that deceit. You do not deceive each other in general. So according to some of the ulama, the meaning of the hadith is not limited to that specific thing that is called bay' najash, but it is general. Do not deceive in your business transaction. So it includes all forms of what is called tasriyah. Tasriyah is any form of deceit in sales. Originally, tasriyah for the Arabs was that they would feed their sheep a lot of water so that it looked fat. So that if somebody comes to buy it, it would look fatter than it actually is, and it would weigh more. In modern day, a lot of people, a lot of meat stores, what they do is they plug a little tube into the beef, into the meat that they sell, and they pump air or water into it, and then they freeze it, and then they weigh it, and they sell it with that weight, which is most of it is water weight. And then when you thaw it out, the water runs out, and the actual meat is lower. This is a form of tasriyah. This is haram. Also, like apartments, people that sell or rent apartments, sometimes there's a leakage, and the whole ceiling is watery, and then when they want to sell it, they just paint over it without fixing the problem. 2 months later, it comes back, the paint falls off, and then the tenants have to deal with it. This is tasriyah. So according to some of the ulama, the word la tanajashu generally means do not do any form of do not deal with each other in any form of deception, whereby you profit from it. Do not cheat each other. Do not plot against each other. Do not deceive or trick each other in a way where you profit. According to some of the ulama, the word la tanajashu also means do not in any way excite conflicts among yourselves. When you're dealing with your mu'amalat, your general day-to-day dealing with each other, let it be such that you're not doing anything that would cause conflict among yourselves. Or do not do things that would cause people to want to stop talking to you or to cut you off. These type of things are haram. So la tahasabu. Do not be envious of each other. Wala tanajashu. And do not deceive each other in business in any way, or do not excite any sort of conflict among yourselves when you have business transactions. وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا. And do not hate each other for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To hate for the sake of Allah is wajib or mustahab. To hate for the sake of Allah is wajib. If the reason you hate something is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits it, that is mustahab, it is wajib. Man ahabba, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Man ahabba lillah, wa abghada lillah, wa mana'a lillah, wa a'ta lillah. And in one narration, wa ankaha lillah, faqad istakmala al-iman. Prophet ﷺ said, whoever loves for the sake of Allah and hates for the sake of Allah and gives for the sake of Allah and withholds for the sake of Allah. In one narration, and marrying his daughter to another person for the sake of Allah, he has completed his iman. So hate for the sake of Allah is wajib or mustahab. But hate for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is haram. So the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا, do not hate each other. And it also means do not do the things that would create hatred for each other. If you're doing something and it's causing other people to hate you, then don't do that thing. It also means do not harbor hatred. If you hate someone, don't harbor the hatred. Sometimes you can't help yourself. Sometimes you don't sit down and make an intention, right? I intend to hate this person. It happens to you. These are emotions that comes upon you. So what the Hadith is saying, if that happens to you, don't harbor it. Talk about it. Get it out. Solve your problems. There's a lot of people, they go around, they hate another person. The other person doesn't even know that they hate them. And it might be something like a misunderstanding. Those things can be clarified. It might be that somebody's doing something that is causing you to hate them, but they don't realize they're doing that thing. Maybe nobody ever told them, look, you're doing X and that is causing people to dislike you. Maybe if they're told, they'll stop. Maybe they can't stop on their own. Maybe they need help. If you tell them, they can know that there's a problem and then they can seek help. But the idea is not to keep in your heart hatred for people. If you can't express it in a way to deal with the problem and get it over with, then don't harbor it. Try your best to get rid of it. Before you sleep, at least sit down and think, do I hate anybody? And then let that go before you sleep. There are even modern methods, even by non-Muslims, that people are trying to teach to get this out. Some people just imagine it like a smoke. I don't know if these are effective. I'm just saying these are things that people sit down and meditate. They can imagine that hate as some physical thing and they imagine that they do it. But the idea is do not keep in your heart hatred for each other. And do not do the things that would obviously create hate. Like ghiba, namima, and don't speak about people because that's something that creates hatred behind their back. Don't spread rumors about people because that creates hatred. Don't carry news. This is called namima. Namima is to spread news even if it's true, but in a way that you know will cause conflict. You go to somebody and say, hey, you heard what that person said? And then you go to the other person and say, hey, you heard what that person said? This constant carrying of news creates fitna. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that it's enough for somebody to be a nami, a person of namima, that he says everything he hears. Every bit of news that he comes across, he tells another person, eventually you are going to be causing problems. So the Prophet ﷺ said that's enough to make you a person of namima. And in other words, don't do that. Don't do that. That's haram. And if somebody does that, and you are at the receiving end of that, then don't listen to it. So la tabaghadu also includes you not listening to ghiba and namima. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala, he said the obligations upon somebody who hears namima are 6. So the one who spreads it, his obligation is to stop. The one who hears it, according to Imam al-Ghazali, you have 6 obligations. Somebody comes to you with news. Number 1, the first thing is don't believe it. Not everything you're told, believe. Somebody comes to you with news, don't right away believe it. Hey, you heard what that guy did? If you can't stop the person from talking, then don't accept it as true. You don't know if it's true. And that person probably didn't mean to lie, but somebody lied to him. Like in the chain of narration, there's a lot that can go wrong. So just don't believe any news that comes to you. Number 2, command. Your second obligation, according to Imam al-Ghazali, command the person who brought the news to stop. So don't believe it and then tell the person desist from this behavior. Don't continue spreading news. The third obligation is to hate that act for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't hate the person, but hate the act. Dislike that is being done, that there are people out there spreading news about other people. The fourth obligation is not to have a bad opinion about the person that the news relates to. This is part of the first one, which is not believing. So don't allow yourself to just, by hearing something, have a bad opinion about somebody. Even if it's true. Because we don't know why people do what they do. A lot of people go through a lot of things and we don't know what they're going through. And we don't know why they're doing what they're doing or saying what they're saying. So don't try not to dislike the person or judge them. Because you don't know really what's happening. So try your best not to dislike people based on news that you got about them. The fifth obligation, he said, is not to dig into the matter if there is no need. You heard about it? Just tell it right away and just ignore it. Don't go digging into it. When the person that brought you is gone, don't go call another person, hey, is it true? Don't try, just let it go. Just don't follow up on it if there is no need. If there is a need, follow up with it in a manner that is shari. And you follow the rules of the Sharia to the end of the affair. But if there is no need to follow up, then don't follow up at all. And the sixth obligation, he said, is not to repeat it. You hear the news, don't go telling another person. Just keep it to yourself. And not to tell another person includes close family. A lot of people think that a lot of these rules don't apply between husbands and wives and mothers and daughters. No, it applies to everybody. If you hear something, don't go telling your husband. If he hears, don't go telling your wife. Keep it to yourself, that's it. Just let the matter go. So, لَا تَبَغَضُوا, and do not hate each other or spread hate among each other or do things that create hatred among each other. وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا, and do not turn your backs on each other. Dabar means to back something. This is the word Arabic. In Arabic, this is what the word dabar means. To turn your back towards something. Your dubur is your backside. Tadabbur means to think about a matter all the way through, not just face value. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنِ, do they not ponder upon the Quran? Do they not think about the Quran all the way through and not take it at face value? So لَا تَدَابَرُوا means don't turn your backs on each other. And what it means is do not neglect to fulfill the duties owed to one another. If somebody is sick, don't neglect to visit them. This is something that they're owed as a Muslim. If somebody gives you salam, do not neglect to answer the salam. If somebody needs help, do not refuse to help them. If somebody comes to you with some sort of matter that they need assistance, do not turn them away. If a beggar comes and they actually need, then do not turn them away. This is what it means. La tadabaru. Do not turn your backs on each other. If the least you can do is to make dua. Let's say you have no other means to do anything for any other Muslim. You can't visit them because you yourself cannot walk or something like that. You can't help them with money because you're poor. You can't answer their salam because you cannot speak. Then the least you can do is make dua for them. Then if that's all you can do, la tadabbaru, do not turn your backs, don't neglect to even do that. So help one another in whatever ways that you can, but don't ever turn your back on the Muslim community. If you need to, for example, you know that people are seeking employment, and there are Muslims that you can help by employing them, but there are others who can get the job and be more efficient. La tadabaru means give it to the Muslims even if it means you're going to lose some level of productivity. Because to neglect that Muslim where they cannot take care of their family is turning your back on a Muslim. So that's what it means. La tadabaru. Don't turn your backs on each other. According to some of the ulama, it also means do not backbite. And backbite, they use it. The ulama differ among the scholars, they differ what is backbiting according to Sharia. Some of them say it is to say that which you are not sure your Muslim brother would like being said, in their presence or in their absence. So that is backbiting according to some of the ulama. This is the definition mentioned by Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, rahimahullah ta'ala. That backbiting is, this is the principle, saying that which you do not know for sure your brother would like. Which means, if you're unsure, it's still backbiting. Anything that you're not sure, if somebody said, you know this person would be okay you saying this, if your answer to that question is other than yes, then you are backbiting. Whether you're saying it in their presence or in their absence, it doesn't matter. That is backbiting, whether it's true or it's false. That is called ghiba. And according to some of the ulama, it's only ghiba if it's done in their absence. In other words, behind their back. So according to some of the ulama, la tadabaru means don't speak about each other in their absence, behind their backs. It also means do not plot against each other secretly for any reason if it's not good. If you are vying for a position, even religious position, don't plot to take down another person because it involves tadabbur. You are behind his back, plotting for his demise, for his ruination. This is not permissible. So do not violate the rights of each other secretly. According to some of the ulama, it also means do not cut each other off. La tadabaru, don't turn your backs on each other, means don't cut one another off. And we mentioned before the ruling about cutting each other off. And we said that if it's for a religious reason, then it's permissible. If cutting them off will solve the problem. But if not, then it's not permissible. For dunyavi reasons, you cannot cut one another off for more than 3 days. Except parents and anbiya. Except parents and prophets, it's haram to cut them off for a single second. It's not permissible. So, la tadabaru. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا يَبِعْ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَيْعِ بَعْضٍ. And do not sell something upon the sales of your brother. What this means is, if somebody is selling something and another person agrees to buy that thing, they already came to an agreement. I sell you this for this. And they come to that agreement. If you're a seller, you're selling the same item, don't approach the buyer and say, I'll sell you the same thing or a better one for a lower price. Because that sales between that person and the other seller is already concluded. So don't enter and offer something, the same item for a cheaper price. Same thing for the seller. If a buyer is buying, you're the buyer. Don't offer your purchase to another seller if you've already made an agreement to one buyer. Now, the ulama discuss this at 3 different stages of the sales. So this can either happen during the bargaining, before an agreement. Let's imagine a market. You're selling something here, next to you is another person selling the exact same things, like a date shop next to a date shop. And a buyer comes, and him, the buyer, and the seller next to you, they started to negotiate. They haven't made any agreement as yet. They haven't settled as yet at all. During that time, according to majority of the ulama, it is permissible for the next seller to offer something. Because it's not yet a sales between the sale and purchase haven't concluded, or it hasn't reached a stage of istiqrar, meaning a settlement yet. They're still in a bargaining period. You can throw in your offer during that bargain. Because right now, it's not you're intruding upon the sales of your brother, because it's not yet a sales. It's not yet called a bay'ah. But in the bargaining period, you can throw in your offer because it's still up for bargain right now. So at that point, it is permissible according to some of the ulama. Then, so that's one stage. The second stage is after there is an agreement. Same scenario. Now the two persons, the buyer and the seller, made an agreement. So negotiate, and then they settled on a price. Yes, I'll buy 1 kilo of this type of date for 100 ringgits. That's an agreement. After that is done, it now becomes haram for the other buyer to offer the same product for a cheaper price, or to offer any sales, because now it becomes an intrusion upon the sales of your brother. Because what just happened, the Arabic word bay'ah can now apply to it. And if the word applies, the hukum in the hadith applies. لا يبيع بعضكم على بيع بعض. Do not intrude upon the sales of each other. So even according to Sharia, we have what is called a period of khiyar. The period of khiyar is a 3-day period in which both persons can put out of the sales if both of them took the option of khiyar. Which means you have 3 days if somebody says, I buy this for this. And I have 3 days of khiyar, meaning within that 3 days, if they want to cancel the sale, they can. During that 3 days, nobody can make an offer on that sales either. This is haram according to Sharia. So if somebody buys something like that, and then he comes home and he's telling his neighbor, I just bought this thing, but I took the option of khiyar. So I can have 3 days. And the guy said, oh, why didn't you tell me? I know this other guy who's selling it for cheap. Not permissible. Stay silent, because that sale is already being concluded, and if you interrupt that and counter offer, you are intruding upon the sales of a Muslim. And this is not permissible. So that's the second one, that's also haram. The third instance is after the 3 days period. After the sales has completely concluded. So somebody bought the item, took 3 days khiyar. After the 3 days, they concluded the sales. Yes, I'll keep the item. The buyer keeps the item. The seller keeps the money, the price paid for the item. After that, is it still haram to counter offer on the same item? According to the Shafi'i madhab, no. Because it doesn't matter afterwards. The sales is done. According to the Hanbali madhab, it's still haram. Because it can lead to what is called iqala. Iqala is an agreement to just simply cancel the sale and return the items. This is not a haqq, it's not a right that people have by Sharia, but if they want to, it's an option. You can ask for it and they can agree to it. So if you counter offer, even after the sales has been concluded, after the khiyar period, because it can lead to iqala, the person knows, I didn't know I can get it cheaper. He goes back to the buyer and says, do you mind just taking it back and giving back the money? And then the person agrees. It can lead to that. But that can be harmful for the seller. So because of that, the Hanbali madhab says even after that it is haram. According to the Shafi'i madhab, no, because it's optional. The buyer doesn't have to take it back. He can just simply say no, and that's it. So, وَلَا يَبِعْ عَلَى بَيْعِ وَلَا يَبِعْ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَيْعِ بَعْضٍ. And the same thing applies to marriage. There's another hadith, it talks about sales and it talks about khidbah. Don't offer upon the offer of your brother. Meaning, if somebody goes to the wali of a girl, the representative of a girl, and asks to marry her and they agree. So now they're in that period. It's not a marriage as yet, but they agree to the khitbah, to accept the proposal. During that period, nobody else can come and offer to marry the girl at the same time. You can't, because now you're proposing upon the proposal of somebody else, and that is not permissible. So, وَلَا تَبَاغَضُوا وَلَا تَدَابَرُوا وَلَا يَبِعْ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَيْعِ بَعْضٍ وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. And be servants to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as brothers. The language of the hadith is interesting because it said وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. This ikhwan is hal. The Arabic is called hal. يعني كُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ وَحَالُكُمْ إِخْوَانًا, which is not the meaning. It means, anyway, that goes into Arabic. وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. Be ibadallah, be worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as brothers. What it means is that what makes you brothers is your ibadah of Allah. So, كُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, the thing, the brotherhood of Islam, the thing that it is grounded in is the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else. Which means that any other form of connectivity that people have, any other form of connection that people have, these connections are secondary when it comes to your worship of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So, for example, no other connection trumps your connection as Muslims. So, you're being Arab, you're being Malaysian, none of these trump your being Muslim. So, every Muslim is the brother of another Muslim, regardless of any other connection that they may have. Regardless of if they're Arabs or not. Regardless of their male or female, it doesn't matter. All of you are brothers by the fact that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا, and be the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as brothers. So, Imam al-Qurtubi, rahimahullah ta'ala, said, but the hadith is, it's an instruction for the believers to make their brotherhood of deen like their brotherhood of, in Arabic they say deen. There's ukhuwa ad-diniyya wa ukhuwa ad-tiniyya. Tiniyya just means, Allah says in the Quran, it means from tin, from clay. So that's just because deen and tin rhymes, that's why. But what they're saying is, in the way your blood connection is between your actual blood brothers, make your connection with your Muslim brothers the same. Or even let it be higher if it's possible. Because you might have blood connections that are not Muslims. But your brothers that are Muslims are closer to you than your brothers who are not Muslims. Even though they are your blood brothers. So again, it's a complete, and all of you read the 40 hadith, you see the complete changing of the minds of people. The Prophet ﷺ was reconfiguring the cognition of the Sahaba. There's the frame of thinking, the world view of the companions were being reshaped by the Prophet ﷺ. And if you read the 40 hadith carefully, you see that complete changing that he was doing. They were tribal people. These are tribal people. Tribes. People go to war. Clans will go to war for 40 or 50 years. Same people, but if there's conflict among them, you have to have contracts as protection. That used to be between tribes. All of this used to happen. And he's telling them completely that all of that must go. None of that matters anymore because you're Muslims. And he's telling this to people like the Aus and the Khazraj who had years of fighting because of their tribal connection, and he's making all of that disappear. It's a massive shift. Think about it now, where we have these nationalistic ideas that still form the people's identity. Even to this day, which is shocking that it still happens, people go to school, they're indoctrinated to have a nationalistic outlook. You sing the national anthem every day. You make a pledge to your country every day. You're a Malaysian, we're all Malaysians. These are the kind of things that they put this in your minds all the time. Oh, you shouldn't have a problem with this one and that one. Why? Because they think they're connected with Malaysians. I'm just saying that because it's here, but it happens all over the world, right? This nationalistic idea. And then you cross a little imaginary line and suddenly you're in Indonesia and you're a Malaysian versus an Indonesian. All of that, like, oh, why shouldn't a hungry, like refugees are not seen by many people as hungry, homeless human beings that are coming for food. People don't see it that way, right? They see it as Indonesians or Filipinos or Myanmaris coming to take our reason. That's how nationalism works. Right? It's no longer hungry human beings who need to survive. It's you're a different nationality. You may look like me, I don't care. You're a different nationality. Imagine somebody now who went through years of that form of indoctrination. Somebody coming to them and saying, that really doesn't matter. Your whole identity has been formed by this idea that I belong to this land and this. And somebody's coming and saying, no, it really doesn't matter. You get the point? Like, it's a complete changing that he's doing, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's saying, look, Aus, Khazraj, doesn't matter. You're a Muslim, that's a Muslim. The thing that creates your ukhuwah is you are both ibadullah. You're both servants of God. So وَكُونُوا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ إِخْوَانًا. And then he said, الْمُسْلِمُ أَخُو الْمُسْلِمِ. Just to emphasize the point. A Muslim is the brother of another Muslim. لا يظلمه. He does not oppress him. In any way. Doesn't matter who he is. If you're Arab and he's Habashi, you're a Muslim, he's a Muslim, لا يظلمه. A Muslim cannot oppress another Muslim. You're strong, he's weak, لا يظلمه. You're a soldier, he's a civilian, لا يظلمه. You're a police, he's an ordinary, لا يظلمه. That's a Muslim, لا يظلمه. A Muslim cannot oppress another Muslim. We don't care what the connection is. We don't care what the positions are. We don't care if you're the hakim and this is the servant. He's a Muslim, you're a Muslim, and Muslim وَأَخُ الْمُسْلِمِ لَا يَظْلِمُهُ. A Muslim is the brother of another Muslim. He does not, meaning he cannot oppress him. And he cannot support somebody who oppresses him. Because to support oppression is oppression. To support oppression, you're not doing anything, but you support them. You are part of the oppression. Sometimes your silence can be part of the oppression. We see, for example, what's happening in many parts of the Muslim world. We say nothing. Your silence is part of the oppression. You're complicit by silence. So لا يظلمه. He does not oppress him and he does not support the oppression of another Muslim. انصر أخاك ظالما أو مظلوما. The Prophet ﷺ said, help your brother ظالما أو مظلوما. Help your brother if he's a zalim or if he's being oppressed. If he's an oppressor or he's being oppressed. The companions, we understand the second part. Help them if they're oppressed. What do you mean by the first part? Help your brother if he's an oppressor. It means stop him. Stop him from causing oppression. Because by doing that, you're helping him in the akhirah. If we see people oppressing another person and we say nothing to the oppressor, then we're just letting him go to the akhirah with all that oppression. So how? That is the act of an enemy, not the act of a friend. The ulama, they say, people, when it comes to amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar, people feel shy because they don't want to harm the friendship. Amr bil ma'ruf, the command good and forbid evil, a lot of people don't do it because of their friends. And I said, but this is not friendship. The Anbiya, who were the closest people to their ummah, commanded them to do all good things and prohibited them from doing all bad things. Iblis, with their enemy, encouraged them to do all the bad things. So when you encourage your friends to do the bad things, you're actually behaving like Iblis. And when you stop them, you're behaving like the Anbiya. So, help your brother if he's a zalim. Stop them from oppressing. So, la yazlimuhu means he does not himself oppress another Muslim. He does not condone the oppression of a Muslim. He does not support the oppression of a Muslim. And he stops the oppressors from oppressing Muslims. Even if your last resort and your only resort is to make dua, then that becomes wajib. When we see what's happening in Palestine, it becomes wajib to at least, the very least is to make dua. If you can do nothing else, then your last resort is to make dua. If we neglect that, then we fall under this hadith. لا يظلمهم, and we are oppressing them by not trying to stop the oppression when we can. If we can stop harm and we choose not to, then we are part of the harm. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So, لا يظلمهم, and then he said, ولا يكذبهم. This is the correct pronunciation according to Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah. La yukdhibuhu, with a dhamma. According to many of the muhaddithun, it is la yakdhibuhu with a fatha. Many of the narrations, many of the printing of the 40 hadith, you'll see la yakdhibuhu, because that's how it's being narrated by many people. But according to Imam Nawawi himself, it is la yukdhibuhu. La yukdhibuhu means he does not lie to him. A Muslim is the brother of another, he does not oppress him, and he does not lie to him. Except if it is for a shar'i reason. And lying is haram, except when it is halal. Lying is not always haram. You can lie for many reasons. You can lie to save a life and it comes back. If somebody comes to you and he has like a sword or a gun, he's looking for somebody to kill him, you know where he is. If you know where he is, you lie and say, I don't know where he is. Or you lie and say a false place. If you know he's here, you lie and say he's there. This is wajib, to save a life, if the life is not down. Yeah, to lie to please your wife or your husband is, the ulama differ. Some say it's mustahab, others say it's mubah. And Imam Malik said it's makruh. Or it's reported that he said it's makruh. But it's mustahab, according, at least it's mustahab. At least it's, it's mubah. According to some of them, it's mustahab. Your wife puts on a dress and I look fat and this. Nope. They are batting in high. Nope. The food is good, too salty. Yeah, it's good. And you wash it, come later. But the idea is you lie to please him. Same thing for your husband. Right? You lie to keep your kids calm. It's permissible. Some of you say it's makruh, but it's permissible. So, your kid falls down, get a cut. Big cut like that. It's bleeding. They say, it look bad. No, it looks a little cut. Nothing. They keep him calm. That's a lie. It's jaiz, permissible. So, لا يكذبه means does not lie to him if lying is not permissible. But when it's permissible, then it's permissible. Because it's in their good interest. It's permissible to lie to solve problems. Two people, they're not talking. You go to one of them and say, the person I spoke to him said he's willing to apologize. Which never happened. But you're just saying that to solve it. And then you go to the other and say, no, I spoke to the guy today, he's willing to apologize. So you get both of them to come to talk, to solve the problem. That's mustahab. It can even be wajib if that's the only way to solve the problem. So lying is permissible in certain cases. So, لا يكذبه, he does not lie to him when it is haram to lie to him. And sometimes lying to them may hurt them, but you have to. Sometimes telling the truth to them may hurt them, but you have to. That's what friendship is. So, لا يكذبه, you don't lie to them, especially if they're in a position where people normally lie to them. People in positions of power hardly hear the truth. Was I wrong? No. And say deeply, you know they're wrong. But you have to be true. That's why the people who can tell the truth to power are usually the greatest of the shuhada. So, لا يكذبه ولا يحقره, and the Muslim does not belittle another Muslim. A Muslim does not think lowly of another Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has raised the ranks of human beings. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have honored, we have lifted the status of human beings. And they can only be lowered if it is by the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So only the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made lowly can bring down the status of the human being. Kufr, for example. So Allah has lifted the status of human being, but Allah has lowered the status of the kafir. So if somebody is a kafir, then we can lower their status because of their kufr. Meaning that quality. The object of our dislike is the quality, not the person. But we cannot lower the status of anybody in our minds for reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not lowered. If somebody is poor and I am rich, Allah has not dropped the status of the poor. So I cannot lower their status because of poverty or poorness. If I'm in a position of power with somebody who's not, Allah has not dropped or lowered the positions of people without power, so I cannot look at them as lowly. If I am knowledgeable and somebody is ignorant, then we can only lower them to the status that they have been lowered, nothing more. If they can learn them, we teach them. But to lower the status, to feel that you're, even the alim just now, I said, it doesn't mean that the alim should feel higher than anybody else, because that itself is ignorance. But the point is, most of the times when we look at people as being lower, we look at them as being lower because of dunyawi things. Because of status, and because of wealth, and because of family name, and because of where they live, because of where they come from, because of what university they went to, because of all of these things that do not matter. Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala said, if we feel that a young person is lower than us, then think. If both of us die now, the young person is in a better position because he hasn't sinned as much. You've been around longer, you've been sitting longer than he is. He is better than you. And if a knowledgeable person thinks lowly of an ignorant person, think that if you die now, he will have less to be answerable for than you. Because ignorance is an excuse, but knowledge is not. So in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he may enter Jannah and you may not. So just always, there's always, when you look at people, there's always a reason for you to think that you're lower than them, or at least you're all equal in the sight of Allah. But you don't lower the way you think about people. If you were religious, one of the things that affect religious people is that they look down at irreligious people. That's a problem. Because that's arrogance. All of your religiosity may mean nothing because of arrogance. You don't know what happens tomorrow. That person may die, that person may make tawbah and die right after it. And you may commit major sins and die right after. And all of your religiosity means nothing, and all of their lack of religiosity means nothing at the end. And then also, يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعِذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah can pardon whomever He wants, and He can punish whoever He wants. He can pardon the akhirah, somebody who didn't pray a single salah in their entire life. And He can punish somebody who prayed every prayer for his entire life. So why are you thinking that you're better than anybody in the dunya? Hating, lowering kufr is one thing. But again, nobody knows who will die and what. You look at a kafir, they can die a mu'min tomorrow. You look at a believer, they can die a kafir. You don't know. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالْخَوَاتِيمِ. You don't celebrate before. Right? You don't celebrate before the thing happens. If you pass one, you enter university, you pass one exam, you don't celebrate as if you've graduated with honors. Because you don't know, you still have 4 years left. You will be the worst failure at the end of this whole process. Somebody that you just beat, because they failed one exam, that may propel them to study hard, they may graduate the best. Don't celebrate now. Wait until you're done. But the thing with life is you have to wait until the end. Don't look who you are now and feel proud about it. And don't look at what other people are now and think that's what they're going to die on. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So always just be hopeful. You're not better than anybody. It's one of the worst things you can just think that you're better than anybody. The time where somebody came into the gathering of the Prophet ﷺ and he spoke about the person as being from the people of Jahannam. And the companions were back, and that's a good person. That's a person that prays and fasts and is doing all of that. Why? Why is it? The Prophet ﷺ said he entered the gathering, he felt he was the best of the people of the gathering. That's the thing. That's the thing that will ruin him in the akhirah, is to think that he was better than everybody else in the dunya. Because nobody with an ounce of pride will enter Jannah. Nobody with an ounce of pride in his heart will enter Jannah. What the ulama say that means, though, just to give a bit of hope, is that if you have pride in your heart but you didn't act on it on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah will remove that pride before you enter into Jannah, so that nobody with pride enters Jannah. So it doesn't mean that if you have some level of pride, you'll be prevented. That's the point I'm trying to. But you have to work on getting rid of pride from the heart, because pride is that. And pride, the Prophet ﷺ defined it as refusing truth and seeing people as lower than yourself. That's pride. Pride is like you're in an argument or something like that, and you see that the other person is right once they provide their argument, but you're so proud you just can't accept that they're right. Just to refuse what is true, you know it's true, simply because of your pride. You don't want to accept that you were wrong. That's what pride is, and ihtiqar, advancement. And to see people as being lower than yourself. And according to the ulama, one of the things that happened to the people of pride is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala humiliates them in the dunya before the akhirah. That's a punishment for people of pride. If you see people as lower than yourself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes you to be humiliated in the dunya before the akhirah. In many ways. There are many people who they think they're better than everybody else, and they go down on them because they're in a religious position. And then they go to lead the prayer, and they can't even get through Al-Fatiha. They make mistakes in Al-Fatiha. It's like, well, you thought you're better than everybody else, you can't even get through Al-Fatiha. Which is a surah all Muslims know. Sometimes kids have to be behind you reminding you the surah. That's a form of humiliation. So just, whoever lowers himself, Allah will raise him. Whoever raises himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lower him. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Ihtiqar is a product of ujub and kibr. Ujub is to have that self, to be in love with the self, to admire the self, which is the source, according to some of the ulama, is the source of all diseases of the heart. Is to be satisfied with the self, to like the self. That's the source of all disease. Because once you are satisfied with who you are, you don't work to be better. So they say you need to work on yourself. Nah, myself is perfect. That's the problem. That's the problem. So that ujub, that self-conceit, is the source of ihtiqar al-ghayr. Because you're seeing yourself as, I don't need any work, I'm better than everybody else. That guy is not at my level. But if you don't have that self-conceit, you're working for whatever good you have in yourself, you're grateful, and for whatever deficiencies you have, you're trying to fix them, then you see yourself as being equal to everybody else. Because you can see good in yourself and bad in yourself, and you can see good in other people and bad in other people. And but what you do is you see both of us as just human beings on a journey. In my journey, I may be able to accomplish certain things that you have, but in yours, you have accomplished certain things that I have. So I can benefit from you, you can benefit from me. But both of us, we're on one journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's the perfect. So once you get ujub out of the heart, you get ihtiqar al-ghayr out of the heart. And you get self-conceit. If you can get rid of that from the heart, you won't see anybody else as being lower than yourself. In fact, you see other people as people from whom you can benefit. And once you start seeing people as people from whom you can benefit, you become humble. Because you're not even care, you're not even concerned about what you have to offer. If you go around with this mentality, you meet somebody right now, new person, if you go around with the mentality, oh, this is a person who I can benefit from somehow. There must be something that I can benefit from this individual. You're not even concerned about the other end of, oh, there are things this guy could benefit from me. You're not concerned about that. Because you're not going around with the mentality of, how can I contribute to everybody else? You're going around with the mentality of, every person I meet, I can benefit from them. Because all human beings have things that they can offer. If you're going around with that mentality, you become humble to everybody that you meet. Because you're only concerned of, I'm the pupil, this is the teacher, but everybody that you meet, this is somebody I can learn something from. Even if it's a child, I can learn something from this person. If it's a homeless person, I can learn something. Homeless people have so much to offer. The sabr, the rida, what keeps them going? You never suffer with this. You haven't been polished the way they've been polished. You haven't ever been put in the situation that they have. You don't know if you have the character to survive. They did. They can teach you about that. Children, they can teach you about discovering and about learning, about obedience and restraint, about wanting something where your parents just not giving it to you, but you just gotta accept that acceptance. How do you accept that level of control That's something that we forget as adults. You can sit with a child and say, hey, listen, how do you accept that? And then they can tell you, and then you can benefit from that. You can start implementing. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you meet, you can learn from that. Once you have that in mind, you're always a student to every human being that you meet. You're humble, you're always ready to learn. Once you shut that off in your mind, then you become arrogant. You're only thinking either, this person is not at a level to interact with me and better, or they gotta learn from me, and that's a one-way. That's it. You're done when that happens to you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. According to Imam al-Ghazali, Ujub al-Kibr are two of the 4 cardinal diseases of the heart, from which many of the other diseases spring. So if you can fix that, then you're going to fix a lot of problems. So, do not belittle people, especially if it's for outward reasons. Outward reasons meaning beauty, meaning money, meaning status, position, name. None of these things matter. None of these things matter. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Inna Allah la yanzur ila ajsamikum wa la ila suwarikum." Allah doesn't look at your forms outwardly. So it's not a judgment. It's not a measure used by God in any way. So why are you using it as a judgment of other people? So inna Allah la yanzur ila ajsamikum. But Allah looks at your heart, and nobody can judge the heart of another person. So the judgment that Allah uses for the status of people, none of you have access to. None of you knows the heart of another person. So in essence, none of you knows who is better than you. You can only be informed about that. We know Abu Bakr was better because the Prophet told us. We know the Prophets are better than everybody else because Allah told us. But everybody else, nobody knows. Nobody knows who's better than who. So you can't belittle anybody. And also you can't excessively raise the status of anybody. Because there are many people we think are saints, they're wicked. Their hearts are wicked. So anyway, that's a whole different. So do not belittle each other. And do not raise your own rank. The Quran commands you not to do it. وَلَا تَزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't consider your own self as zaki, as pure. Do not commend your own selves. هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Only Allah knows who has taqwa. وَإِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. And the best of you in the sight of Allah is the one with the most taqwa. And then he said, وَكُلُّ لَا يَقْتُرُ. And he said, التَّقْوَى هَاهُنَا. Taqwa is here, and then he pointed to his heart 3 times. The reason he's saying this after what he just said is لَا يَحْقُرُ. The Muslim is the brother of another Muslim, he does not lower him. Taqwa هَاهُنَا, meaning only by taqwa we know who's high and who's low. And taqwa is here, is not external, so none of you can know. So at-taqwa huna. And he pointed to his heart 3 times. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, بِحَسَبِ امْرِئٍ مِنَ الشَّرِّ أَنْ يَحْتِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. It is enough for a person to be wicked, or it suffices a person of wickedness that they lower their Muslim brothers. I'm just emphasizing the point. That let's say you do no other bad. You fast, you pray, you do everything. You don't do any haram thing, you don't do any makruh thing. You're very, very, very cautious in your implementation of the Sharia. But the only bad thing you do is that you think you're better than other people. The Prophet said, that's enough. That's wicked enough. And that's worse than many of the other bad things that people do. Because other people may do bad things and they make tawbah. The arrogant person does not make tawbah because they don't think they're wrong. So it's enough, he said, of wickedness. If that's all you do, then that's enough wickedness, that you think lower about your Muslim brother. He said, كل المسلم على المسلم حرام. The entire Muslim is haram for another Muslim. Meaning, the person of a Muslim, his body is haram. You cannot hurt or harm the body of a Muslim except when it is lawful according to Sharia. So if, for example, in the qisas, in exacting the crimes, chopping the hands and chopping the necks, and returning, if we can exact a harm, if somebody does harm to another Muslim, we can do the exact same to him, according to Sharia, we do the exact same thing to him. These are exceptions. But generally, the body of a Muslim is haram for another Muslim. You cannot harm the bodies of people, you cannot hit them, you cannot do any of those things to them. Again, we said except when it is lawful according to Sharia. If the armies, for example, are training, then it's permissible for them to spar. If they gotta hit one another by sparring, that's permissible. That's harming the body is a justified reason. But other than that, not permissible. If there's a sport, for example, where it needs to cause harm to the body of another, it's not permissible. So causing harm is not permissible to the body except when the Sharia allows it. So, damu, you cannot shed the blood of a Muslim. وَمَالُهُ, and his wealth is haram for other Muslims. So you can only take it when it is lawful. It is haram to violate the right of another Muslim as it relates to his wealth. So only when it is permissible, this is the only time you can do anything to the wealth of another Muslim. So taking his money, taxation, is why taxation is haram. They just take people's money for no reason. This is why fines, legal fines, are not permissible. Somebody speeding and take X amount of money. How is that justified by Sharia? Somebody standing on the wrong side of the road and fining 50 ringgits. How is that valid according to Sharia? You park your car on the road and they come and give you a ticket because you didn't pay 80 cents, they charge you 50 ringgits. How is that justifiable by Sharia? None of these things are permissible by Sharia because the wealth of Muslims are sacred. And by Sharia, this is in the books of fiqh, the hakim, the leaders, are supposed to provide a place for people to tie their horses and their camels on the roadways. Meaning, in modern day, you're supposed to provide a place for them to park their car. This is your duty, it's not. Anyway, I don't want to get deep down. But the wealth of Muslims are not. You can exact punishment. The hakim can do things to maintain order in society, but it just can't be infringing on people's wealth. The guy parks wrong and cause harm for other people, let him clean up the street, for example. That's permissible. You can order him to do that, community service. Let him go order him to go to the orphanages, for example, and give 2-day service. That's permissible. But to take his money is not permissible. His wealth is sacred. And it can only be taken in a way that is justified by the Sharia. وَعِرْضُهُ, and his honor is sacred. A person's reputation is sacred. It cannot be violated except by a Shari'i justification. That's why you can't backbite, that's why you can't slander, you can't start rumors, you cannot believe rumors, you cannot spread things about people. This is why we are commanded to keep people's sins secret, which the next hadith speaks about, so we'll talk about the details of that there. All of this is because the honor of people are sacred. You hear a rumor about a Muslim and everybody, like social media now, and cancel culture. Somebody does something and everybody jumps in their case on social media, not even verifying what they did, what they said, why they said it. And the thing is with social media is that human beings can't be human beings anymore. It's weird. Everybody sometimes you get upset and you say something. You say something that you know you shouldn't say. Something that you yourself know you shouldn't say. If you give that same human being 1 minute to calm down, they'll say, no shots, I shouldn't have said what I said. But you tweeted it, and that's it. Nobody cares that you know you shouldn't have said it. The honor of people are sacred. If you come across a case like this, you don't jump in on the bashing. You don't spread the news. You don't, no. Hold back, because that person has an honor. The person has family, anyway, I don't want to go on. So the honor of people are sacred. You cannot violate that for any reason. If we hear something about somebody, make Imam al-Ghazali said 70 excuses. Sit down, why would this person say X? Come up with 70 justifiable reasons. If after 70, or if you can't find 70, then criticize them. Which is impossible. Most of us can come across 10 right away, but for anything you can think, why would somebody say that? Come up with an excuse for them, rather than blaming them and speaking about them, because they have an honor that should be protected. And it should be protected by their own brothers. The Hadith says, a Muslim, Akhul Muslim. It's like your blood brother. Let's say you wake up one day, you see this, people saying something about your blood brother. What would be your first response? You jump in? Share the news? What would be your first response? If you wake up one day and just see news about your own blood brother. First thing you try to call him to say, why? I saw X, why? First thing is verification. Because your own brother, you're verified. And you try to, if he admits to it, you want to know why. And whatever excuse you give, you try your best to accept it. Okay. Even if you think it's wrong, you try to say, look, this is why he was wrong, that he did what he did. But these are some ways we can have sympathy for. That's what we'll do. And the person has something saying, a Muslim, Akhul Muslim, every Muslim is your brother. So when we hear something, do the exact same thing. Find a reason, a justifiable reason why the person may have done what they did, and then have some sympathy with that. Because this idea of just not respecting the rights and the honor of people is just not permissible. And then he said, Rawahu Muslim. The hadith is collected by Imam Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj radiyallahu ta'ala. And we'll continue the next hadith, the next session. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.